So who else said they were coming? Oh, Jim Sorensen and Chuck. Okay. We can start whenever you want. And I'm going to kick it off after.
Did you see the article in the newspaper about the science fair?
Yes.
They did a big one.
They really was nice.
Yeah, they did
Very
a
nice.
good job. Yeah.
Like, bring that up today at the board meeting.
Oh.
No, I think you.
We're flying out the end of March for a meeting with the dates. Yeah, the 21st.
Suzanne, Dr. Tepedino will not make any of our meeting, correct?
Yeah, neither one. And Catherine supposedly was going to make an appearance. She just said she couldn't do it for all that time. I told her not to come, but she is heck bent.
Serene, she's Catherine McGinnis.
Yep, and you heard that the announcement is that the Dixie County Educational Foundation going to be the friend of the foundation this year. She was told while she was in the.
You'll share that tonight
Yep.
with all of us. Great.
Yep.
Figure it out.
3:30, so we'll get started.
Yep.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you all so much for being here on this late afternoon. We appreciate your presence. It means a great deal to us, and we look forward to a great workshop and working through matters pertaining to the charter school that the board is considering. A lot of work and efforts going into this, and I know we're going to hear and see and understand great things today. So welcome everyone, and we're going to turn the workshop now over to Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. I'm going to use the podium. I have a couple of slides. I see Lindsay is walking in, so. I need my glasses. Lindsay, you ready to do the presentation?
Yes. I want to thank everyone for being here.
There you go.
All right, I just thought it was important to, I mentioned to the board at the last meeting, to take us through a little snapshot before we brought some experts with us today. Have any questions from the board about the charter school, the proposed charter school. So I thought it was important that we go over some of these things, so bear with me. This is kind of a really 30,000 foot lift of how charter schools were created across the country. They were created to offer educational services, flexibility, and innovation to increase opportunities for students and to improve learning. So it's important to remember that when we talk about some charter schools. Charter schools are tuition free. If you're a public charter school, you receive public funding and are considered public schools. How did we get here today? Back in 2022, the Department of Education approached myself and the staff about potential starting a charter school. Many of our at the state college system level at some state colleges. Schools such as Tallahassee and Santa Fe, I know two that come to mind. Both North Florida and us were approached too. And we thought there was money available at the start of that period of time in 2022. But at the time, I didn't think timing was right for us. We didn't know enough about it. And as you know, here at FGC, at Florida Gateway College, we want to try to do things right. And we're not saying they did it wrong. We want to do it the right way, especially something that's very new to us. And we also needed to have some support from the community and also the Board of Trustees. So the charter school concept and information was presented to the board on a number of occasions, not formally, in a formal resolutions and so forth, but at the March 23 meeting, we met in Gilchrist County, and the board did take a vote that we should move forward on more research and to actually get with some experts, two of them which are today. So remember, it's called the Florida Gateway College Collegiate Academy. That's what we're proposing it is. That's the shortness of that. The name could change. We just threw it out there as a thing. So it's important as we talked about this. I thought some data for the board and the public would be important. So when we look at FGC, 44% of all our students come from Columbia County. If you put all the other counties together, the other 4 counties, it's only 30%. So by far, the largest county is Columbia County. The other thing I thought was important that we talked about is there are some challenges in Columbia County that are different than some of our other counties. And the stats for reading, mathematics, and English are concerning from when it comes to Columbia County. This is not an attack on Columbia County. We think we can offer an alternative and help with that issue. It's not going to be the salvation, but I just think it's important. So I threw up 2 data points that I think are very important. There are others, but I think these are important. The 8th grade mathematics competency levels at the 8th grade indicates that 68% of the students in Columbia County are not performing at the 8th grade level. Now, I'm sure one of you will ask the question of what the state average is. The state average is about 47%. The majority, all other the 4 service counties are below that 47% when it comes to that. Another important aspect of Columbia County is it's the 2nd highest in the state of the number of teens not working or going to school. Not working or going to school between the ages of 15 and 19, which is 26.5% of that entire population. 980 individuals in Columbia County currently are not going to school or not working. All other service district counties, the other 4, are under 9%, and the statewide average was 7%. The location of the charter school and the need to help is most apparent in Columbia County, and as I just stated, the majority of our students will come from Columbia County. What will the FGC Academy try to accomplish? We will focus on innovation and student success from the first day of high school. We're known for this. We're embedded in all our programs and courses, and it's proven to be effective. One of the things I thought was important, that we don't brag enough about our institution, that 70% of the students that start in the freshman year come back in the second year. This community college average nationwide is about 56%, and in the state of Florida, it's about 59%. So our figure, that 70%, compares to most national 4-year retention numbers. And we can even go on further that about 58 to 59% of our students graduate, when the nationwide average for community college is 23% nationwide. I couldn't get the ones for the state. So I just thought it was important to understand that. We want to educate every student to be college ready and then offer a pathway to a certificate and AS degree by completion of their high school years. So that's our goal. And we want to try to fulfill, because it matches our mission as a college, that we offer superior instruction and quality training that prepares students. It's tuition free, remember that, and we'll provide access to students and families. And I think it's important when we talk about some of those figures that I gave earlier. Those figures, if we can't answer some of those questions for specifically Columbia County, it impacts this college, it impacts the future workforce, and it impacts our all economic development for this region. So it's very important. So those are my questions. That's kind of my brief synopsis. I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions of me before I turn this over.
Dr. Barrett?
Yes.
I'm just perplexed by that second from the bottom item. More than a quarter of our teens are not working or going to school. Any idea what's driving that or what the root cause is?
A lot of times, family issues. It is getting back to the whole career technical issue. It's preparedness. But that is a very concerning number with that, because those individuals are more apt to have crime issues, obesity issues, lack of motivation, and those impact us significantly as an institution. And by that time, it's going to be hard for this institution. We'll serve them. We serve them anyway. But the thing is that it would be very interesting. One of the things that came out of this research was that one of the issues is that's a population we need to try to capture here to try to help that for the future, and we got to figure out how to do that. But remember, those are students that aren't high school graduates, or they haven't even gone for GEDs. So that's a challenge. And that came from the state well-being report, those two statistics. I can prevent you with those. It's a pretty in-depth, and it goes into a lot of other areas, but I just figured those two were the most kind of things that we wanted to do. So, other questions? Go ahead. Mr. Arnold. Mr. Arnold, I want to introduce Mr. Arnold. I want to make sure you should be. There you are.
Okay, great.
Mr. Arnold, he told me about his background. I did meet with him in Orlando when a group of us went down, and he has a really compelling story how he got involved with this. He told me he doesn't have to say that today. You can say that, but I mean, it's just this is his passion. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. I know I've known Megan for several years today, but my name is Sean Arnold. I'm an attorney with the Arnold Law Firm. We're based out of Jacksonville. There's 6 attorneys in my firm. We do almost 100% of our practice is charter schools. And so you ask, well, how the heck does that happen? Or, that type of thing. It's been the growth in charter schools. It's been the growth in the types of matters they have. And I have 2 school board attorneys on this panel here. Schools get into everything, right? From family to anything else that comes along with it. So my background was as a prosecutor, and then I was doing litigation. My wife, Melissa, was a land use attorney, and they had a national group called Imagine Schools come to her firm where she was at and asked, hey, we want to do the due diligence in opening up a school. And that was in opening up a charter school, and then they had an appeal from a denial of an application, and then they did the application, and they started operations. And so that's how we got into charter schools. And now we serve 225 charter schools across the state, so about 1 in 3 charter schools across the state were we involved with. So I've been asked to give, again, this is all I do, all the depth that you need to get into running schools. We could be here for years, right, making this presentation. I'm going to try to give you a very brief overview of what are the expectations if you were to get involved with this. What does a governing board do? So what is that? And there's lots of different structures in terms of how you could do this. It could be, this board could be a subcommittee of this board. It could be somebody else, completely different. I want to cover generally what is that. Generally, what does a sponsor do? So Megan's got a school that they oversee here locally, my client Belmont. And then what are some of those things, and then talk a little bit about what are the students, what is the process for getting the students, and then how do you resolve some of the issues if you open a grade school, which I'm sure you'll do, and then you have more students than you have room to put in. So we talk a little bit about that. Okay, so the governing board basically sits in your seats and they run the school. They're volunteers. They are you file an application to wherever it is that you file. You now actually, starting in 2024, have the option to apply to either the local county or any of the 6 counties that you would have here, or there now is an alternative authorizer, which is probably not something you're going to consider in this situation, but there is an alternative authorizer now. Okay, so what are the obligations that you have? If you're a governing board member, what are the things that you have to do? There are so many things that you have to do, but like any business relationship, you have to follow the contract, okay? So there is a contract that's put out by the state. It starts off as a 43-page document. Some counties, maybe in Southeast Florida, turn into a 125-page document. But in any event, it's a contractual relationship. Basically, a charter school is given a license to operate and deliver public education. It's the easiest way to think about what a charter school does, okay? And obviously everybody who's here has some familiarity of what it is that you do. You're a state agency, you're an instrumentality of the government. Most instances, it's not being run by that. It's being run by a private organization. But that's not what happened here. The contract lays out in 12 different sections, all the different things that you need to do. I'm gonna just hit, again, just very much the highlights. There's a lot of reporting that needs to be done. There's a lot of things that staff does, and this is all gonna look very familiar to what your seats that you have now, and what you do as a charter school. There's required reporting, and most of it involves testing, attendance, and other things like that. That's how you get paid. So you show up and you get paid to do those types of things. The number one thing that you certainly understand, everybody on this dais understands, is that these are public funds and you're responsible for it. And so when in most instances, that's the biggest thing that you have to educate folks about on the board is like, most people come from a private entity and they report to their CPA or other things like that. These are public funds that have to be accountable for every dime and every dollar. So that's the number one thing that comes along is what are your obligations. So your statutory obligations, I kind of put it in the 6 panels here. Basically all the duties that would normally be assigned to a board like you, and I put up there the district school board, apply to charter school governing boards. Now, charter schools are oftentimes, I explain to most clients, you're a school district of 1, okay? You're a school district of 1 most of the time, and you have somebody who oversees you. Everybody reports to somebody, right? And so the person that you most directly report to is going to be the local school board. And so you have that. So you must develop, the next thing is, again, something you're very familiar with. You're gonna have policies and procedures for the schools. Some of these are things that you have to do that you choose to do. Some of them are things that you have to do. Last year, I sent out 9 policies that were dictated by the Department of Education to my schools. And actually, it's this school year, the 23-24 school year. There were 9 policies that came from DOE saying, thou shalt have a policy that says this. So we adopted those and we put them out there. Annually determined school capacity. That is basically the number of seats that you can have. If you have a facility that only has so many seats, it's going to be kind of limited to what it is. Charter schools are allowed to operate to the physical capacity of whatever facility they're using. So basically whatever the fire marshal says you can do, okay? That's the limit of that's the maximum of which you do. The limit, or whatever it is that you set, is what it is you're going to do. So if you have a physical capacity for 1,000, but it's only realistic you're going to have 250, then say what it is that what you're actually going to have. Bottom left, a charter school is required to meet at least twice every year. And those 2 meetings have to occur in the county in which the school is physically located or wherever the sponsor is. There are systems of charter schools that operate in multiple counties, and so sometimes they'll go to each one of them for every place that they have a school. That's where you would meet, and obviously, it's going to look very similar to this. When you first open, you're going to want to have a lot more meetings. Unfortunately, sometimes I have to call clients and say, hey, you need to have a special meeting because of this, we need to get this done. Normally, or hopefully, it's for a happy event, like we're closing on financing or something like that. The bottom middle is going to be something you're very familiar with in terms of having sunshine training and all of those types of things. You have to comply with that. Not every single thing that this board has to do as a charter school governing board member, and that's would be another thing that we could go through at some point in the future. But for the most part, your responsibilities, particularly sunshine, public records, all those types of things apply in a charter school setting. And then you're reporting progress. Again, this is going to look very similar to what you do on your board. You're going to be reporting progress annually to the sponsor. Your sponsor is going to come out probably once a year, maybe more, to do a site visit and check and see how those things are doing. The number one thing that your statutory obligation is an audit of your financials, okay? And what I list up here are probably, again, things that look very similar to higher ed, okay? You have to have systems to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse. You have to promote compliance with, generally acceptable accounting principles or GAAP. And then there's other things that are in there. Number one thing, again, safeguard assets, all the different types of things that look very similar to what you do. And there's a lot of detail on that slide, and they'll be available for you if you want to look at it in a little bit more detail. So that is a very brief summary of what your obligations would be to the sponsor. So let's talk about what would you get from the sponsor. Okay, so this is assuming that there would be a sponsor, and assuming, let's say that that it's Columbia County. What would Columbia County owe to you? What does Columbia County do, again, for Belmont here locally? So they, under subsection 20 of the charter statute, it lists out what the obligations are. So a charter school will pay 5% of the revenues that it receives for administrative services. And there's a list of services that they have to provide, and there's other things that they have to do. There's a lot of technical support that comes from it. There's also administrative things like exceptional student education, which is not something that as a higher ed you're really going to deal a lot with. Like 504 plans, you generally just accept what they have. IEPs don't really, it's not really something that you have here. That is a big area of expertise, that the sponsor provides to most schools. Because again, school districts are schools of one, particularly smaller schools. They just don't have the resources or the ability to bring on the people to do all of that. The sponsor is responsible for you. So you are a public school. You are part of their system. Your grades go into their grades. Your financial audit goes into their audit, okay? You are part of the school, but it's a very strange way in which Florida is set up. I say it's like McDonald's sponsors Burger King and monitors them, but then they compete with each other. I mean, it's almost the way that Florida has set itself up. And that comes from the Florida Constitution. So in Section 9 of the Florida Constitution, there is local control that is given to the local school districts. And I've had some conversations with attorneys about, about this going back and forth in different settings. But that's why it's there, is that the local counties have the constitutional authority to supervise local education. And so that's why there's a lot of reporting that goes there. So the sponsor, again, the sponsor monitors the school's participation in the state accountability program, i.e. what your school grade is, the testing, and other things like that. The sponsor will, again, be, sponsor, another term for the sponsor is the authorizer, so this is the school that actually brings you into existence. So there's a lot of responsibilities that goes on the sponsor. They will report all kinds of things to FDOE. They act as the local education agency. And let me explain that to you if you don't know what that is. That is the local entity that is charged with implementing the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, okay? That is a huge responsibility, not only for providing and taking care of those kids, but the legal responsibility for it, okay? I know that it takes up a lot of school board time, attorney time, and other things like that, is monitoring all of that. A couple of other things. Again, we talk about money. They're gonna look at your financial statements. They're the repository for money that comes to the school that's responsible for you. So they get a bucket of money. They get a large bucket of money, and we talk about the fact that they scoop it out and give it to you. Sometimes they're able to take parts of it, sometimes they don't, and they're just basically a pass-through, and they have 10 days to get it to you. So they receive it within 10 days, it must be sent off to the charter school. And there's also a lot of training responsibilities that go along with it. Not everything, and that becomes the source of conversations every once in a while about, well, we should be given this training. No, it's not our responsibility. And so we have those conversations back and forth. Final part, enrollment. As you know, enrollment is the lifeblood of your institution. It's the lifeblood of a charter school as well. So what are some of the things that you'll do? I apologize, I probably should have made that text a little bit bigger. On the third line, it talks about the fact that until you are full, enrollment is on a first come, first served basis. I mean, you kind of understand that if you have, so many sections of algebra or whatever else, it's open until it's full, okay? But the procedure, there is a procedure for how you get into a charter school once it's full, and that's what is a random lottery, okay? So if you're the first, if you're one of the first, say 75, I think I saw as a projection for the first year, if you're the first 75, you get in, but there is a period where you're taking applications before you let people in. And so if you end up with 90 applications, then there will be a lottery. In the first year, there are probably a few exceptions that maybe you would get somebody through, and I'll talk about those in just a second. But until you reach capacity, anybody can get in if you're an eligible student, which would mean that they're in 9th through 12th grade, and talk about kind of how that gets done in other places. So the first responsibility, or the first place that students are allowed in, is from the county where the school is located, okay? So as the applications come in, the first would look at Columbia County, and then you would go out, assuming Columbia County, as presented in the plan, was the location of it, and then count people from outside of that. Somebody from Monroe County, if you had space and they were so inclined, could travel to here to take a space. So there's that, and there's also something, and so this is in 1231, the charter the statute that talks about this. But there are some exceptions to this and an ability to work around it. That could be some of the ways in which we talk about ways to plan it. But generally, it's something called controlled open enrollment, which charter schools have to comply with. And then let's talk about what would some of those preferences look like. Once your school is open, then there are preferences that can be given in certain circumstances, such as like siblings, students assigned to or attending a failing school, students who are children of an employee of the school, or a governing board member, or an active duty service member. Now understand these are not mandatory, these are all compulsory. I apologize, the reverse of that. They are what you choose to do. You opt into it. So you can choose to have these or not. Now, the ideas about where from the county or outside the county, that is law, unless there's an exception to it. And then there's also a few other things that you can do, a different subsection of 10, which is that your students of specific age group or grade levels, students who are at risk for academic failure, or residing within a reasonable distance of the location. So those are all a few different things that are there. And this last thing I talk about here is where we talk about the exceptions. So read through it, it's fairly dense, and if you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to talk about it as well, but I put it in here for you to take a look at. The one thing that is interesting is the idea about an inter-district agreement between counties that could be created if you wanted to do something like that. So that would be something that would be an option for you if we wanted to create such a thing that maybe help you with some of these, some of the restrictions that you have here. So that is all that I have. Again, trying to keep it short, but as inclusive as much as I could of the different things. So does anybody on the panel have any questions? Did I talk so fast you don't know how to form a?
Can I have you just address the podium for me for the recording?
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Are you aware of any charter schools that are running more than one session per day?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I have a school, it's a conversion charter school that is a CTE school down in Palm Beach County that runs multiple sessions. So where you talk about the fact that you have capacity, it's to the physical capacity unless you have multiple sessions. So just using easy numbers, let's say you have room for 100 students. If you ran, I think they go from 7 to 2. And actually, now I think about it, I've got other schools that are like dropout prevention schools that do the same thing. So they'll run from like 7 to 2:30, and then they'll start the next session at 3. So they have a changeover there. So that is a way that you can work around the capacity of it. So if you know, and of course that would be something that, now I think about it, would be an option for you.
Any other board member?
I have another one from the last time we met. Someone else asked it. Do you have charter schools that support a region more so than than an individual county?
I have a lot of schools that are located on borders, so they'll have a lot of people cross it. I don't know, I think this is a pretty unique proposal, what you guys are proposing. I'm not aware that if any of my clients, I have clients in 38 counties. Like I said, I have a lot of border clients, so they will have, we talked, to do that, and that's why the issue about the interdistrict proposal that you could put together between multiple counties. That's been something that we've done with some clients. I can't think of a client. I know that I have clients who that will have. I have a school that's in southern Volusia, so they have Volusia, Seminole, and Brevard that all attend there. But that's not that wasn't their mission. It just based on geography. That's what happened.
Last question again from last time. I took notes. Who's responsible for the transportation?
So you're going to have something that's in your charter contract that will say that transportation cannot be a barrier to it, but they'll also give you a distance in which it is that you can do. So, for instance, most schools say 2 to 4. I think Belmont says 2 to 6 because it's a more rural area. I actually remember that because I think it's like the largest number that I have of any of my clients is 6. What happens is that you would have a contract with your sponsor that would lay out transportation, and the statute talks about the fact that it can't be a barrier, but it also says what is a reasonable distance. So from a reasonable distance, you're responsible for making sure that the student has a way there. That doesn't mean you have to provide a bus. That means that you have to figure out a way for them to get there. That could be carpooling, that could be other modes of transportation, that could be regional transport, like that you pay for the bus transport, you give them. Most counties now have free transportation for students that are under 18, at least in my experience, and where I've worked with clients on this issue. So if this was the location of the school out to the furthest county, furthest end of your service district, you're not responsible for sending a bus to them. Generally, that's not it. Some clients choose to do that, but that's your choice. And understand that for normal transportation, what I call normal transportation, like 2 to 4 miles, my funding expert that we work with a lot, Dr. Benz, described the fact that you only get about 60% reimbursed for your transportation costs. And that number is probably going lower as time goes along. So,
Can I ask you about in public schools, you use the figure 2 to 6 miles.
yes.
So like 2 miles would be an exclusion zone for public schools that they won't transport
Yes.
inside of that. Is that what you're saying?
So there is an exception to that, which is if it's a hazardous walking condition to the school. So you would have to look, that would be set by each individual county's determination. If we were standing right in this location right here and you draw a circle out from 2 miles, I don't know that coming in on 90 that there's a way to walk here. I really don't think there is. So
What I'm asking is your mileage number, is that an exclusion zone that you're setting up?
it's basically a donut. So if in most schools, you have like let's say Columbia High School, okay? You can walk up to the school. So there's a donut around it. It's 2 miles. Either the parent is responsible for getting them there, or if you're dealing with K-5, I think you have to transport them. But so at your age group, basically for your planning purposes, for high schoolers, either the parent's responsible for transporting them, or it's presumed they can walk here. That's what we talk about with the hazardous walking condition. They would walk here. Or they would walk to Columbia High School, not necessarily here. Then you have a ring of 2 to 4 miles or 2 to 6 miles, depending on what your contract says, is to how far you're responsible for making sure that student can get there. Outside of that, it's not your responsibility. It's presumed that is not the parent. This is a choice school. It's a choice to come to the school. it's not like, you know, again, with Lindsay or Megan's clients, that they draw a zone and they say, you have to come to this particular school, or this is your neighborhood school. Because it's a school of choice, the parents choose to come here. There's a case from 2012 or 2013 in St. Lucie County that talked about the fact that because the parent chooses to go here, that they also take the responsibility of knowing what the transportation or lack of transportation from the school is, and therefore they're agreeing to meet it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Quick question, just then, you may have touched on this, but school grades,
Yes.
charter schools have to have school grades?
For the type of school that you're going to have, yes, sir. I mean, there are some grade schools that don't get graded, but that's not going to be this type of school.
And if they fall below a certain school grade, almost like public schools do for a period of time, then the state may step in, is that?
It's a little bit easy. It's a little bit shorter process with a charter school. And basically, if you get 2 Fs in a row, you're likely going to get closed. If you get below a C, you're going to be put on a school improvement plan. If you get Cs for multiple years, you're going to be put on a school improvement plan. And then your contract is only so many years, 5 years, possibly up to 15 years. And so it could be, so grades are important.
From your presentation, correct me if I'm wrong, but your assumption is that the school board here would be the local sponsor?
I was using that as an example, I guess.
So what are the options as far as sponsors go?
So there's still only the option for, so if you're looking at a sponsor, your option is one of the counties that you're located in.
I thought in the previous meeting I had heard that the college could be its own sponsor.
That's an authorizer. So you're talking about a sponsor. So if you want to authorize your own school, that would be it. But then as I talked, so just one of the things to think about is that when I talked about all the sponsor responsibilities, so you would sit in that role. You would then have to have a completely different board run the school.
So I guess what I'm confused about are what are the pros and cons of the two routes to go?
If you had, we're talking a few hundred students. If you were to be the authorizer, you would basically have to provide everything to that school. You would have to provide all of the reporting, all of the testing, all of the grades, all of the accountability, the auditing, all of those types of things that you would have to do. And then you would have another entity that would be created that would actually be the governing board, right? And then you would have those two things work together.
So this board would appoint another board to?
You could not appoint that other board because
Who would do that?
it would have to be another entity that would be doing it. It would be, so I could have a client come to you and be, so we'll take TCC, for example. They have a separate entity that applied to TCC to be a charter school, and then they created their own charter school. They're supposed to have their own separate governing board, and that school operates, and TCC sits in the role of Columbia County.
Okay,
So-
that's where I'm confused. So that Tallahassee Community College, an outside entity approached the board?
I don't know if it can.
Or said, we want to run a school and we want you to be the authorizer?
I don't know if a separate entity came to them. I don't know the genesis story. Actually, Dr. Noe knows it better than I do. It may have been that they approached somebody and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? And came to them. She knows the story better than I do. I did their training, their governance training, but I don't know a lot about them otherwise. But I know generally how their how they were created. So it could be somebody in Live Oak comes to you and says, hey, I want to open a charter school and I want you to be the sponsor instead of this. I've heard a lot of conversations about that.
Okay, you just confused me there. You
Yeah.
swapped words on me. I'm not clear on the difference between an authorizer and a sponsor.
Okay, the authorizer is the entity. In 67 instances, it is the same. The authorizer is the sponsor, okay? There's now been created, as of like 3 years ago, the ability for state colleges to become an authorizer. So now we've created another 20, I think, something like that. But you have the choice of whether you want to sit in that role or not. Okay, so whether the idea came from within or comes from the community, the question is whether you want to become another.
My next question is, how many state colleges are their own authorizers?
I believe it's 2.
One,
There's just one.
right now.
I think that there's, I think
Out of how many have charter schools? One out of how many?
there's 20 state systems.
Okay.
20.
I believe it's
Now
20.
one, or I believe it's Tallahassee, right?
He's saying how many state college systems have charter schools?
Have charter schools?
1.
20?
No, there's 20, there's 1.
No, how many state colleges?
Have our operators, I guess.
One.
No, there's.
0. I think the answer is 0.
No.
No.
State, can I?
Yes, please.
So, two things. I think let's clarify, authorizers are entities that can approve a charter application. So we have, now the district is an authorizer because they approve charter applications,
The school district?
the school district. Now we have where state colleges can become authorizers. And currently, we have TCC is one authorizer, and just recently, Miami-Dade College applied to the state to become an authorizer. Now, that's different sometimes than sponsor, and that gets confused sometimes. So in the case of Tallahassee Community College, they were the first authorizer, and they had, and the way that it happened was there was a group of people that wanted to have a charter school, and TCC would be their authorizer and their sponsor. So there, and this just happened in August. So I'll say that right now, the authorizer and sponsor stuff for colleges is new, and it's still kind of evolving as far as the responsibilities. And so we're working right now with TCC and Miami-Dade College to help them do a lot of the things that school districts have had to do. For example, like Sean spoke about, is special education. You have to have a SPMP document that gets submitted to DOE to be able to serve students with disabilities. It's a big process that school districts go through. It takes them months to submit to DOE. That's one of about 80 things that
I'm very familiar with
TCC.
that, so let me cut you short.
Yep.
I'm back to my first, I'm still confused about my first
Authorizer
question.
and, okay,
No,
and
no, not about
sponsor.
that. How many, in layman terms, how many state colleges have some type of charter school under like we're trying to talk about?
Okay, so let's.
All statewide.
So you have to, so right now, we have College of the Florida Keys they're a state college that has a charter school under them. They're not the sponsor, and they're also not the authorizer.
Okay, I'm
So
not
they-
interested in an individual, I'm talking about just a general number. How many state colleges in the state have charter schools under them in some form?
4.
4, only 4. And only one TCC is the sponsor and
Correct.
authorizer?
Yes.
Okay, that answers the question.
Thank you, Dr. Noy.
Any other questions? Did I answer all your questions?
Anything else? Yes.
I have a curriculum question.
Okay.
So the state of Florida sets forth curriculum requirements for students in Florida,
Right.
4 English credits, 3 math credits, whatever. How much leeway does a charter school have in going above and beyond in curriculum requirements?
You can always exceed, and I have a lot of
Okay.
clients who do.
So
choose
you
to
could
exceed.
require a 4th math credit instead of 3?
Yeah, I have some that have requirements for you have to do so many, like I have an art school down in Miami that you have to have 6 electives in art. I have a language school in Jacksonville that says you have to have 4 years of a foreign language. You can always exceed.
Okay,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
can exceed. You
Yes,
can't go, you couldn't go less, but you could exceed the state requirements.
Right, and I mentioned several technical schools that, you would have like you do different trades. I have schools that do coding. I have schools that do STEM, that, like you said, you have the 4th math credit. You can have 5 or 6 science credits and other things
Okay.
like that, yeah. So.
Great, okay, thank you.
And just, Mr. Chair, the other thing we can potentially do with the charter school, and one of the biggest challenges with CTE and so forth, is some of our colleagues are doing much longer block scheduling. And one of the biggest challenges with the high schools is regarding CTE is they have an hour potential of, and then by the time they get into a lab, they have to go to traditional age. So there's some more flexibility with the curriculum design that I know some of our colleagues do applied learning on Fridays and get their own. So that's a day of basically internships and so forth through their exploration and so forth. So it is a design potential that's much different than a traditional school.
Yep.
So.
Mr. Crawford?
Yes,
I
please.
didn't ask any questions last time, so I'm making up for it. Under what conditions, if any, could the charter school be a financial burden on the college or the sponsor?
Financial burden on the sponsor, the answer is the sponsor will likely say, we're not going to do that. So there's something in your charter contract that will say that no debt that you incur goes to the sponsor. Now, the question is it in the mission of some other entity that can support the school? Okay, so then if you were talking about from the college's perspective, you would have to see, is it part of your mission and do you have authorization to spend money to do that type of programming? I have several schools that have lots of sponsors who will backstop the school or sometimes just basically push in resources. So school districts do a lot of fundraising, charter schools do the same type of thing, and they may have benefactors who actually will build the building for them or buy the land or do other things like that. So, clearly if you have land here, if you were to build the building, lease it to the school for $1, those are all, like the first things I can think of. And then beyond that, you have to look a little deeper.
Any other questions? Yes.
I know, I heard you talking about this some, and it was a question that we had at the last meeting that you guys weren't at. And maybe I just zoned out today and missed the answer. One of the things that we were discussing at the last meeting was the role that this board would play, almost like being a school board. But you said something earlier about a different entity coming in and maybe serving. Is that serving in that role? So what would our role be?
Depends on what you choose.
Okay.
So you have lots of options available to you. You could be the authorizer and sponsor. You could be the authorizer and ask somebody else to sponsor it. You
Okay.
could.
Let me stop you. If we were the authorizer and had someone else sponsor, how would that work? Who would we? How would that work?
You would have to get somebody else to stand in the role of providing. You'd have to probably enter into an agreement with another entity, like maybe Megan's client, to do some of that. But you would have to have two parties who'd want to do that, work together that way.
As a, again, I'm just going to use the word school board.
Right.
So you would enter into an agreement with some other group of people who are acting as the administration, school board, whatever you want to call it, of other entities to do the same job for this charter school.
Basically giving you technical support. Does that make sense? That's the term I would use. Like hiring an expert, like hiring people who, this is what they do. So you have the option to authorize and manage it yourself or oversee it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You have the option to authorize it and have another entity enter into contract to do that, but ultimately you're still responsible for it. You can apply as the school to one of two entities. You can go to any of the 6 counties, or you can go to Miami-Dade College and ask them to authorize you, which is normally not, for a lot of reasons, probably not necessarily something you would necessarily go to them to authorize you and then negotiate the contract with Columbia County. That's not something I think you would probably do. But we do have schools that choose to do that, where maybe they don't have great relationships with the district, or they think that the district for some reason is not going to work with them through the application process.
Okay. But it all falls back here.
It will eventually all fall back to this board.
Okay.
Yeah. The question is, how much do you want to be involved? in the process. So there's a lot, the idea that colleges can do these things gives you a lot of flexibility.
Okay. All right.
Okay, very good. School safety with public schools has been a big issue. The compliance piece has cost some superintendents in the state their jobs.
Yes, sir.
So the charter school would be responsible for all the intricacies of the Florida Safe Schools assessment template, the FSAT, is that correct?
Yeah.
So they would do their own FSAT, have to have their own SRO or
Right.
guardian or some such, and they'd have to give that report.
Yep.
So just to that point, so if the Columbia County was the authorizer,
Yeah.
we would work with Columbia County. And so typically what they do is they have SROs, and we would say, we're requesting one, and the school would pay that SRO just like any other school in Columbia County would do through a contract. So, and the school would also be responsible for going through all of the safety and security and having the assessment done in the beginning of the year. And I've already spoken with Dr. Barrett. Any facility, we would make sure that we meet all of the single points of entry, all of those requirements. So the school would also be compliant as that relates.
So if we're not authorizer or sponsor, then it would be up to Columbia County to comply with the FSAT. They would complete the FSAT, is that correct?
The school would complete it, but we would do it and we would fall under, so I like to say charter schools that are authorized by the district are just like other schools in the district. So Columbia High School, for example, that Columbia High School still has to go through, that principal goes through and walks through all that security stuff. And our principal at this charter school would do the same thing that Columbia High School principal does and report it to the district. And then the district reports all that stuff to the state.
So that would be away from this board, though, ultimately?
Yes.
It would be on the school district?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was after. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more question, and maybe it's been asked already, but, and I know a lot of community colleges, based on what you mentioned, aren't there yet as far as charter schools, but what have you seen are the advantages to the colleges for getting in the charter school business?
So most of the experience I have with this is from clients of mine who have partnered with community colleges before they were authorized to do these types of things. So the advantages are that you would have students who would be, usually it comes through the dual enrollment or the enrollment in your other programs. And so it is getting students into that program and doing that. It's a way to reach out into the community. There are a lot, depending on what it is that you have, we've had a lot of partnerships with, like if you have a teacher, if you have a teaching program built within your college, it has it's like a lab setting. So you have that with there. It's a way to communicate it's a way to interact with the community, and it's a way of building goodwill in the community as well. And then if you identify populations, the majority of from Dr. Bennett's presentation beforehand, where we're talking about the need in the community for a different type of option. I talk about one of the things I really enjoy about what we do is that we present parents and students with choices and another thing that works for them. These guys have an impossible job. They have to be everything to everybody, right? And that's an impossible job to do. And so we partner with them to identify how we can be part of the portfolio of public education and make it better. And so I think that some of the numbers I heard were pretty, probably there's a way in which the school district, that you can help the school district. And that may be something that you do. So most of the experience, as like Dr. Noe mentioned, there's only one that's directly sponsoring and 4 that have them that are associated with them. Again, we've had clients for a long time that have worked with the schools, and that's been the main thing that there's the benefit to them. It usually comes to the dual enrollment program, but there's a lot of community benefits that can come from it as well.
I think it goes back to Dr. Barrett's presentation at the beginning.
Yeah.
Any other questions
Yeah, I think
for
it was-
Mr. Arnold?
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Noe, you're going to speak to us, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think you should have a copy of this executive summary in your packets. And so these were kind of the things that we talked about the last time that I was here, but I wanted to put it in writing for you all. It's 2 pages, basically, and it shows kind of the projected enrollment. But I want to draw your attention to the specialized programs. So Dr. Barrett's presentation talked about how many students are not in school right now, who didn't take their GED and I think, you know, we live in a time right now, post-COVID, where students, they have jobs on TikTok. I mean, they have jobs on all these other things. So there's no need to go to a school, although there may be no more TikTok. But so I think what we're trying to do and what we see a need for students is to kind of engage them in some type of field that interests them. And I think a lot of the colleges, the impetus for Florida DOE to actually want colleges to have charter schools associated with them was to really get kids, to get them connected into fields, industry certifications or dual enrollment, to see a pathway for them as they go through school. So we've seen, so for example, Pensacola State College started their charter school 2 years ago. They were the first one that had a charter school. They've increased their dual enrollment. I asked her for the percentage, but she said it's gone up exponentially this current school year. They've got, you know, a healthy wait list right now for students that want to go to their charter school. They've had to limit enrollment because they've only got 1 building in the college that they're using, but they're actually bringing on another building starting next August. So I think what we've seen is in this scenario, it really does breathe a breath of fresh air into the colleges and get students that are coming up through high school engaged at the college level in high school. And to have them a part of this campus, I think really gives them something to see themselves in the future. So if you see some of these specialized programs that I bulleted out, a lot of these are things that the college currently offers. And so we could start to get students who are in high school engaged in some of these programs at an earlier age, and then carry them all the way through college here or wherever they choose to go. And the enrollment, you know, what we typically recommend is start with 9th grade and grow it. Now, some colleges start with 9th and 10th grade because they think a lot of the 10th graders are ready for dual enrollment and they're going to start moving them into that. But right now, what we're seeing is most of them just start with 9th grade and then they grow those students, and it takes them 4 years to get 9th through 12th. The second page of the summary that I sent you talks about the facilities and the location. And part of the reason why I think we talked about this location in Columbia, if you look at the total number of students by county, we've got Baker, Columbia, Dixie in your service area. Columbia by far has the highest. And so looking at potential high school students is 2,500 compared to 1,400 in Baker, 536 in Dixie, 691 in Gilchrist, and 633 in Union. So from a logical expectation of enrollment, Columbia seems like we've got the most students that we could target. And now seeing Dr. Barrett's numbers about percentage of students that aren't in school, to me, I think if we could really sort of ignite some more excitement about some of the programs and bring some of those kids back into school, into high school, would be a good thing. And then at the bottom, I did put, just because I know this came up at the last meeting, about sort of the board structure. So again, Pensacola and College of the Florida Keys, they're kind of the traditional model where the Board of Trustees is the governing board for the charter school. But you could also have where you guys aren't the governing board. And so, you know, and that does happen where you get another governing board and maybe there's just one Board of Trustee member on that board. So there is some flexibility as far as the governance structure goes for the governing board for the charter school. And I think the last time I spoke about a lot of governing boards, the work of what has to happen usually occurs in committees. It doesn't occur at the board level. So you would establish committees where a lot of the stuff, the decisions and conversations happen. I think that was all I wanted to present to kind of clarify, and I asked Sean, I'm glad he was here tonight to kind of hopefully answer some more of your questions, but I wanted to give you kind of a concise sort of thought process of what we were in our discussions that we've had so far, where we are, and then allow you guys to ask any additional questions.
It's a great overview. Any observations or questions from any of our board members? Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Noy. Dr. Barrett, would you like to summarize for us, and we'll take a
So,
little break?
Yep, it was just, I wasn't expecting that, but I will just say, Willis has been a challenge for us as a staff, and I think hearing the board, it's a new concept and so forth. We'll look for, you are the governing board, we'll look for leadership from you to move forward or not later in the formal agenda tonight. If you choose not to do this, we're fine, and we'll work it another way, and we'll work it. But I do think there's a specific need that we're not filling, and maybe we can do it a different way. But it's something I never expected us to have to propose 2 years ago, and I think as more of this team has worked through it, I think some of us have kind of solidified our thoughts about moving forward with this. But that's solely at your discretion, as we understand that. And I think this has been a really good conversation. In my 9 years on the board, I think this is the most healthiest, even if we may not agree with each other, I think, as board members. So I appreciate this honesty and frankness. So I appreciate it so much.
I want to ask you a question. We had a couple of our board members who hadn't quite made it in for your presentation, and you had a couple of numbers in your presentation that I think are pretty telling. They were referenced
We can go back to them if you want to.
Yeah, by Mr. Arnold and Dr. Noah. Is that okay with the board if we reference those numbers again?
There's two major ones.
I think it speaks to Dr. Surrency's what's kind of in it for the board as we serve our, and look at serving our service areas. Those.
Okay.
Can I say something? Sure. One thing that I wanted to just mention, I think Sean mentioned it, but since this is a unique college, because your service area is multiple counties, we did pose it to DOE, and I put it as a footnote in your summary here, about possibly, for the enrollment policy, having, all of the students that live within the service area would be considered like in-county, because it's sponsored by the college, and you service all those counties. And so DOE was checking with their general counsel, but the first indication I got was they thought that would probably be okay. So I just want to let you guys know that because you guys have a service area and not other colleges have the same 5 counties, we wanted to have DOE understand that this is something unique to us here. And so would that apply, and could we make that work?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, right, it's what I put in the slide about the interdistrict agreements. We could manage that. We have 2 of these.
Very good.
So those are just, somebody asked about, we'll just go back, and I think you have this data in your packets, especially from Dr. Noe and so forth, but just going back, the majority of our students do come from Columbia County, 44%. If you put all the other counties together, for our student body, it's only 30%. So it's important to understand. So there are some challenges in Columbia County. This is not a reflection on them or something, but we just want to try to help this because, as I said earlier, it helps the college, it helps workforce, and it helps our economic development in our area. So there's some areas that are concerning regarding some achievements for our students going into 8th grade in the county. The specific one that I pointed out is the 8th grade mathematics competency levels. That 68 out of 100 students in Columbia County are not performing at grade level. And the statewide average is 49%. And all our other counties are at levels below that 49% that we serve. those other service counties. And then the big one was mentioned many times is the number of students between the ages of 15 and 19 that are not going to school. And that has a huge impact for our college, the economy, and that's strictly from Columbia County. And when you look at our other serviced areas that we look at, it's 7%. So statewide average is 7%, not one other school is below 9%. So it's very important to look at, and those are really important things. And that came from the Child Welfare Wellbeing Index, Child Wellbeing Index that just came out about a month ago. So this is fresh data. It's a big report. So.
Thank you, Dr. Bear, for doing that again. That's very kind of you. Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, observations from board members, then we have a meeting at 5 o'clock and about 25 minutes to return phone calls.
And there's plenty of food here. If anybody wants, I didn't know we were having food, but Amy decided to run out about an hour ago before. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We did.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Good to see you too. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.